Good morning, radio listeners, TV viewers, or followers on social media. This is your program, The Morning Show with Elton Jones, and a pleasant good morning, pleasant Thursday to you. We know that the election is in the air. Things are getting a much more haste now. Nomination day, the 21st, everybody's gearing up. And we have two parties making it, announcing that they will be taking part and they will be there for the nomination. The parties are the PDF, the new party just given the green light from the Electoral Council to participate. They said they are busy holding community sessions to feel what the people want to do, and they intend to launch their manifesto together with when they put in their lists at the Electoral Council. The other party is the PPA. PPA is an established party here for now quite some time, contested many elections in the past, and the leader, Gracita Arundel, has said that they will be coming back and asking people to put their confidence in the party and informing them that they shouldn't sell their vote even if they're offered these things. So we know that at least there are two more parties. So far we have learned that there are about 8 parties that will be taking part. That should give us about at least 10 persons, minimum 10 persons per seat in Parliament. So from a selective perspective, the voter has many choices. So I hope, in your infinite wisdom, you make the best ones. In other news for St. Martin, the caretaker government has held yesterday what they said might be their last Council of Ministers press briefing. According to them, the new incoming government is nearing the end of the screening process, and they're ready to be sworn in, so they might not be there next week. What we learned from that briefing is that the country is still on shaky financial grounds, and that the interim government regrets that they couldn't stay on longer to finalize the job. I guess that's very personal, because the job, as we see it, isn't what St. Martin had bought into in terms of repair of homes, repair of schools, the dump, the airport, and all those things. We have gotten no more than talk all the time, and every day, basically, when it's supposed to be done, we kick the can a little further down the road. Something else has to be done, something else has to be done. In 2 years and counting, I guess only they can really say that they regret not being able to finish the job, because as far as I know, the job hasn't really been kicked off. Anyway, yesterday we were playing some tapes from Parliament on the Mullet Bay inquiry, and we were trying to feature all the members of Parliament who had input in that. We had stopped short. We had stopped, and we have quite a few more of them queued up. We're supposed to have a guest in the house that didn't show up yet, but we're going to go back to the inquiry, and if our guest comes, we'll take them on as they step in. But let's go back to the inquiry of Mullet Bay and bring up Parliament so you can hear the input of the parliamentarians on the subject.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good afternoon once again to, of course, yourself, the Secretary General, my colleagues in Parliament, and those tuned in to this meeting, the now public meeting on the proposal for a parliamentary inquiry. I want to again thank as you referred to the Member of Parliament, Mr. Chairman, the spokesperson for himself and 6 other members of Parliament who signed off on the proposal before us. So I will address the spokesperson, MP Bryson, and thank him for his concise representation of the proposal, which he made a very elaborate one in the Central Committee meeting on this same topic. Allow me to go into, I think, which were my starting remarks in the Central Committee on this matter, because it is that starting remark that caused a lot of hoopla in and outside of Parliament. And it was given the spin to mean that the matter of Mullet Bay should be handled carefully. In the Central Committee meeting, I said the following, and I wish to reiterate. We, the Parliament, should tread lightly with the tool of a parliamentary inquiry. It is new, and any precedent must be on the basis of the spirit of the law and not on the basis of what we would like it to be. Mr. Chairman, again, I thank you for giving an elucidation of how we came to our law on the parliamentary inquiry based on our Constitution. You have introduced the Article 64 of the Constitution. You have also, Mr. Chairman, and I don't know why you were not, I wouldn't say attacked, but why you were not questioned on your statement, which is on the basis of the Constitution, that the inquiry tool is one of last resort. You stated it, and you are totally correct. That's the way the Constitution says it. In order to get answers from especially the government. And that could mean, that means in the context of an inquiry that you also invite all others who you think can provide that information to the members of the committee established by Parliament for a parliamentary inquiry. I also, in the Central Committee, and another thing that was given a complete different spin, I also in the Central Committee made mention of the fact that I regretted at the time that we did not have the opportunity beforehand to sit and have a good discussion on the proposal. I guess that the 7 members who are signatory to the proposal, I guess they had that discussion before they signed off on the matter. And I need to also mention here, because this is a fact, that MP Rolando Bryson, when he prepared his proposal, he shared it with the faction leaders in Parliament and asked for their input. Unfortunately, or not maybe, the UD faction did not have the opportunity to chew up and, bounce off the proposal for the inquiry. But I needed to state here, I am aware of the fact that it was sent to the faction leaders and asking for their input. I think that's important in terms of the process going forward. I also mentioned in the Central Committee meeting that I believe, this being the first proposed parliamentary inquiry, that we should also use it as a tool to inform the people of the whole matter of a parliamentary inquiry. What can be expected of them, of whom, etc., etc. The MP Leonard also raised the matter of, again, let me put it back to something that I stated in the Central Committee, and all of these matters were taken and given a totally different spin. I talked about the procedures, the processes that I believe we should establish, and then it was like, but the law says what the process is, and and some of us went on and on the topic. But the fact is, there is no process described. For example, when we get the budget, when the budget is made available, how do we administer the budget? How do we solicit and commission the services? Are we going to follow the procedures of, and this is a question, are we going to follow the procedures of government when it comes to finances? This is nowhere stipulated, not in the law, not in a policy, not in a procedure. I can imagine that these things would have to still be established by the inquiry committee, but they have to be established. Who gets what? Who do we commission? Do we shortlist lawyers in order to then decide who will get the work? Do we send out advertisements for the different positions? All of these things are processes that we don't have available for a parliamentary inquiry, and we're going to have to establish them. So with respect to the processes, this is what I was referring to, not asking if we have a law on parliamentary inquiry. And I know we have a law. I know it's on the basis of our Constitution. I know what the elucidation to the law says, but we don't have a process outlined for the conducting of a parliamentary inquiry. And then we were asked and admonished not to make the matter political. Well, this matter has already been politicized. More reason even for us to make sure that no one, no individual to be part of this inquiry feel biased in any way. And the more we politicize it, the more we're going to have to ensure that regardless to who it is, they are given a fair and the same treatment. This is not in a meeting of parliament where you sit and you basically have immunity for anything you say. This is parliament taking up a responsibility on it that could involve in and anybody. So one of my colleagues referred to the issue of the dump, for example. Is it far-fetched to think that a member of parliament, let me stick to myself, decides tomorrow that the dump deserves a parliamentary inquiry with all of the things that we have heard, seen, read, experienced, been told by governments, etc., etc. That would be, to me, a topic that could warrant a parliamentary inquiry. That could mean that we would then have to sit down and decide who comes in on this parliamentary inquiry. So again, it's not only about informing the people about the Mullet Bay inquiry, but inquiry procedures in general, regardless to what topic it is. And please don't take my words and spin them into say, oh, she said we need a parliamentary inquiry on the dump. No, I haven't stated that yet. But it is the right of any one member of parliament to make a proposal for a parliamentary inquiry. And it should be a proposal in the general interest, not what a proposal that I think I should make, or my other colleague, or a next one. No. What together we decide is in the general interest. And that is what this debate is all about. This is what it should be all about. Mr. Chairman, I, of course, received the report of the Central Committee, and I see at least two factions, and maybe others in a less direct way, including the UD faction, by the way. Two factions make mention of the fact that not all the matters mentioned in the proposal for the inquiry are should necessarily be subjected to a parliamentary inquiry. It's stated in the Central Committee report of the meeting of the Central Committee. And as I mentioned, the UD faction is one of those factions that is quoted as making that comment that not all the matters mentioned should be subjected, need to be subjected to a parliamentary inquiry.
Radio listeners, TV viewers, and our followers on social media, my guests have arrived. We're going to continue with the inquiry on Mullet Bay on Monday, but for now, I'll welcome my guests to the studio. Good morning, Madam Jacobs, and welcome.
Good morning, Elton. Good morning to Pearl and to all the listeners and viewers. I must say I apologize. Some of my meetings ran a bit late this morning, started quite early. And initially when I made this appointment, I didn't have any other meetings. But as you know, in this time of the year, it can become very ad hoc.
Yes,
so
I
thank you
understand.
for your patience as well as to your listeners. Maybe we can make up the time after, I don't know.
Election is in the air, so I understand that part, being a party leader. Okay, let's get a few things off the bat. The screening, why does it take so long, and where are we in the screening now for the new incoming interim government?
Well, I must say that starting out, this is my first time as a formateur in a screening. I've been screened several times before, but had no clue as to the amount of work that went into it from the formateur's point of view. It is a process that requires the involvement of the governor, the National Security of St. Martin, and the Prosecutor General, which is actually based in Curacao, so the Prosecutor General for St. Martin and Curacao. All once the formation assignment is given, I then share it with the possible candidates, so we shared it within the coalition as to who the candidates would be. Each person had to sign a declaration agreeing to be screened, first of all, and then the process started. So it didn't start exactly on September 30th when I got the assignment. It actually, the process actually to screen persons started on the 8th of October. I was informed then that it can take 4 to 6 weeks. And if we check from October 8th to now, we are exactly in the 6th week. So whilst it might seem like it's a long time to us who are going through the process and the people who are waiting for the process to be finalized and the public who want to know, and also the sitting ministers and cabinet of ministers and secretariat who need to make preparations, when is it happening, this is the process that we have signed on for. If we want to change it, we have to change it. A lot of people are complaining about it, but nobody, since the complaints have started, have made any attempts to change it. And so I'll be assessing moving onwards after this is finalized, what should be changed. This is the first time, as I say, I am so involved in it. You get a feitenonderzoek, so a factual research that is done into the candidate by the national security, checking into the person's integrity, being able to whether they tell lies, all kind of different things. So they will look into your
politicians. You checking if they tell lies?
That's yes. I mean, proven lies. Because nothing they can, and it's amazing. People of St. Martin, the simplest statement on social media can be warranting the national security and or the prosecutor to do an investigation. Nobody needs to even bring that information to them. So it is very, very, the power of the voice, the power of the pen, and people understanding how much of an effect it can have on one's life. I, for the first time, am aware of the simplest things. I mean, we know some of the issues with our tax office, but you have to have up-to-date tax records, and if you are in dispute with the tax office, that can be an issue. And so many people have had to go back and bring documents to prove that I did indeed settle this year or that year, or whatever the case is, and they are in the right. But what is on the records of the tax office, because of lack of personnel, because of lack of proper system, etc., having a backlog of issues, they can only report what they have at hand. Sometimes things haven't been brought up to date, and that can pose a problem for certain people. And so I believe that is one of the main reasons that it's taken this long. I can say the report from the Prosecutor General is finalized, but I haven't gotten all of the reports yet for the national security, and that should be finalized hopefully by today.
Okay, we learned over the many years that we have these snap elections, that they have the formateur or the prospective prime minister have the prerogative of him as well, so no objections to certain things that might be encountered in the screening. How does that work?
Who you said have the
formateur. or the prospective Prime Minister?
Yes. Again, you can get a report stating any number of things, and as Prime Minister as well as the Governor, you can decide like that's not an issue. That is what you're talking about. Geen bezwaar mean you do not have an issue with it. Certain things might be in a person's file, and because of the confidentiality of it, Elton, and I cannot go into the details, but for instance, anything that could have taken place when you were a teenager, a youngster, something that, because they not only look at you if you're married, they look at your spouse. If you have a business, if you were the director of a business and that business had some type of an issue, what role did you play in it, you know? So it, for certain things, especially if you are someone with assets and with functions, several functions outside of, you know, whatever your regular function is, it would take a longer time to go through your processing because they have to, you know, look into several different aspects of your life. But as formateur and as governor, we can take the decision as, okay, this is the report, it says this, but I have no issue with this, and still put forward the person as minister.
Okay, let's go to the political part of it now. We're having Parliament in St. Martin has been for some time talking about us not having the skills we have, and but there's a disconnect, if you want to call it that, because we basically subsidize all the schools, even those that call themselves private, but we have no input in the curricula. How do we ensure that we get the skills that we want?
I would tend to disagree with you in terms of, I don't know who told you we have no input in the curricula. That's not true. That's absolutely not true. The schools that are subsidized by government follow the curriculum. For instance, the CXC schools are approved to follow the CXC curriculum, which is a Caribbean General Examination. That's a standard. So they are approved for that. They follow that. The ZVOBA schools, which are MPC and Sundial, also follow regulated systems, which are the VSBO, the Harvard VWO. And Academy is the English version of that, the PSVE. And I think the regulation that is lacking at this point is in special education and secondary special education. We don't necessarily have legislation to specify for that, but you do have the general regulation that says there's compulsory education until you're 18. All of the elementary schools have the curriculum based on foundation-based education. So there's a set amount of skills that must be taught in group 1 through 8 or in kindergarten through 6th grade. Those things are there from the Department of Education. What is lacking and what is recently lacking, because when I was there, that was never highlighted to me, because we were out there. There's a limitation right now on the inspectorate based on lacking legislation. I asked that question in the last meeting with the minister, and he was like, it's being done, it's being finalized, or it has to be done. But I'm still getting the complaints directly from schools, from parents, and from the inspectorate as well. I'm seeing children outside of school, and because of this lack of legislation, it's affecting the lives of children. So this is definitely something that we have to fix, and fix quickly.
Okay, that was my next question, because we have truant officers, but that's not the biggest issue for the people under the people are. How is it possible that with compulsory education, the schools themselves can put people out?
Well, to be able to put a child out of school, and I know the policy had evolved to the point where the first resort was an in-school suspension, so the school had to regulate. The child couldn't be maybe in the classroom, but they had to regulate still within the school system for that child still to be opgevangen, as they would say, taken care of, still taught under special circumstances. Then they moved over to suspension for a couple of days, like 1 or 2 or 3. And when it becomes repeated, then it's an issue. Now, I find it very, very interesting that you bring that up. In the last meeting that we had again with the minister, there was a discussion of a program called the Education Care Center, which I had started in the public schools specifically for this reason, because there was a rise when I first went in even in 2013, 2012, 13, coming from the system, I knew that there was a rise in behavioral problems within the schools that are outside of the scope of the teachers to handle. That even though each school had a social worker, and maybe back then in 2010, 11, each school did not, but they are subsidized that way, especially the public schools had a social worker. They have student care coordinators and managers, and still it was never enough. Every time you even get another resource, everybody's still overburdened. Outside of that, the Vogue Directorate has to support you. Outside of that, you have parents, and parents are the first line of responsibility. But we're seeing where that has been a great failure across the board, and most are saying that a lot of the problems that we're facing are due to that. But there is a behavioral, an increase in behavioral problems. When I asked the last time, they said, no, that wasn't the case. They stopped the program. That program was geared towards taking these children that are having so much problems managing in the classroom due to behavior and put them through like a sort of a retraining program with their parents' consent, with their parents' participation during the whole day, not just 7:30 to 1, but through 5 o'clock. So it included sports, arts, and different things to retrain the child and build their self-esteem so that they can function better in class and, you know, create a more conducive area for learning for all, a pleasant atmosphere for learning for all. But I'm hearing the complaint in all schools, not just public schools. I'm hearing it in all the schools, including the subsidized ones, including the ones that have psychologists. A teacher within my family told me she got beat up the other day. That didn't make the news. Had she hit back the child, or had she held him too tight, she would have been the one in trouble. But a 6-year-old had her black and blue. So
Yeah,
this is a reality of what we're dealing with, children with serious emotional problems, lack of control, and I believe that we have to sit with parents, we have to address the situation. I think having some children in daycare from the time there's 4 weeks and 6 weeks, they lack that bonding with one person. Nurturing and love, family is what creates calm, well-organized, conscientious children. I'm not saying that every child out there with a behavior problem is a parent problem, but it plays a role, and society plays a role. Social media plays a role. A lot of parents are working, and so the social things are raising their children, and they're doing their best, but still not able to meet the needs of their child. And the rising level of what is considered now special disabilities, learning disabilities, is also on an increase, or maybe just being increasingly reported.
Let's talk jobs. In the last budget debate, the government said that we have an 9.2% unemployment. They didn't mention what it is among the young people, but the last report on among the youth was about 26%. So my question is this: how do we tackle
26% of that 9%?
Yeah, 26%.
Okay, make sure the people understand that. Misinformation can be a thing tomorrow. That's what they're going to say out there.
I get like Trump.
Yes. Keep things in context. Yes.
So how do we address that, and how do we deal with the on the block people who are not skilled or prepared to get into the job market?
Well, I believe we've made some strides in that. I'm starting at the back, but let me go back to the beginning.
That's fine.
The details, the statistics of unemployment, that's post-hurricane?
Yeah.
9%?
Post-hurricane. It was in this budget, the 9.2% come up.
Okay, then it's still better than I expected.
It surprised me.
Yes, it's better than expected. But again, with the booming construction and people deviating to go into areas where there's now work, that can happen. The 25, 26, 27% of the unemployment population, which is 9 of the total population, 9%, that has remained more or less the same. Elton, I'm going to say, I think a lot of that has to do with, and this is something I wanted to address but didn't get an opportunity to because I was unceremoniously kicked out, was dealing with changing the education system, especially for the VSBOers, in the sense of giving them an opportunity of a full 12 years of education from 6 years old to 18. Too many of these children, because of that policy of no stay back, end up graduating 15, 16 from a VSBO, which is not a full-fledged high school. and sent out into the world. It is not right. Some can get into NEPA. NEPA is there now, which helps a lot because you don't have to send your child off island to get a tertiary vocational education. We do have that at NEPA, so kudos to all who made that possible, including myself. Thank you. No, we played a all of the ministers, the ones before me and after me, continue to push that. And I must say, in this ministry is where we had the most continuity, I must say. And that has been said to me from people who have been involved from the beginning and seen the changes and at a level where they can notice the difference. There's been the most continuity. So NEPA was there as a concept when I got in. The building was built, but the structure wasn't there for the board, for this and that, and we went and we got it in. Because of the hurricane, you got an opportunity to expand it and include more programs. The building space is still too small. There's a little space at the back, so you need capital investment for that. We're stagnated with that. But at least that option is there now. X amount of years ago, that option wasn't there. So that child was left to go to do a GED program, which your parent had to pay out of the nose for, or go to USM, pre-USM programs. How many people are motivated to go that route? That's only academic. Now, the vocational and the academic have opportunities, but I feel that within the high school setting, a child up until the age of 18 should have that opportunity to go either way, whether it's towards academics or towards vocational, and that hasn't been the case. So you have a bundle of kids between the age of 16 and 18 or 16 and 20 with a low skill set that are then not able to get proper jobs. Then you have an influx of immigrants. And you have also a lack of willingness on behalf of these St. Martin children to do those type of jobs. The wages are not encouraging either. So I always tell people, and I tell parents, even the academic child, don't force them into college as soon as they finish if they are not motivated to go, because it requires self-motivation. Let them work in a low-paying job, and you'll see how quickly they will see studying as a great option. And to have that opportunity to study and mature and understand what you're going to do. So there are not enough opportunities. The school system does not force them to stay in school until 18 if they finish a VSBO. And then the parents are up and down, butting and looking. I know, for instance, the lady who works with me, to get a child in NEPA, but then the child don't like none of those courses and sitting around for a couple of months doing nothing, etc. Find a little job here, a few hours there, pick up here, pick up there, but you're still living with a parent. What about that child that was in the home, the foster care? When they become 18, they gotta get out. Where are they going to be able to afford a home? Where are they going to be able to find a job to sustain themselves? So I can see unemployment in that. You talked about the boys on the block as well, and I think the NEPA situation addresses that. A lot of boys have gotten off the block, learned a trade, or they've picked up with a company that is promoting that in terms of road cleansing or cleaning up the roads or doing other things. I'm seeing less and less now that they're looking down on these jobs. And I think if we improve the way, the professionality of these jobs, that we will then have more opportunity for the children to not see it as a put down to be working in this area. Because if we didn't have clean streets, we wouldn't be able to say that we are a positive society. We would complain about other things. So every aspect of society is needed. Every aspect is needed to promote, to have a healthy lifestyle, as well as to promote this island as the paradise that it is. We cannot continue to mess with it and disenfranchise our youth and expect that we could continue to get visitors to come here which sustain us. So we had a big increase in development and we did not take care of our youth. So that is why we are where we are today. This is not a 10-year or 9-year-old problem. This is a 50-year problem. This is a 40-year-old problem.
It's about my age.
Because some of our disenfranchised are not youth. Are people in the 30s, are people in the 40s as well. Are people in the 50s and the 60s who reach their highest level of salary and they can't go any further, then they turn over into a pension that is at poverty level. You understand? So
or below.
Below poverty level. But you understand what I mean? And that's why you create that that need and that dependency. And we have to create lack of dependency now. We have to create, we have to make what we want out of this life. But I don't know if we as a people are prepared to suffer to do so.
I have two phenomena that I don't want to really merge into one, but they play the same role as far as society is concerned. There's an uptick in the school fights, especially in this area up here, where most of the secondaries are, and also uptick in crime. I read an article in Curacao what they're doing to tackle, especially what you call it now, gun crimes. They're doing random searches, random stops, frisks, and those kind of things to deal with that. What is our approach to dealing with the crime situation and school fights in Samar?
Okay, I recently heard the minister making announcements in ways to alleviate school violence or violence around schools, because I think the violence within schools, because of the zero tolerance policy, did drop. We see it coming and going, but I think what's happening in schools, in and around school, reflects what's happening in our society. So you cannot see an increase in violent crimes, because I remember we had Justice Minister in Parliament from the time I went back to Parliament, and that's been, or even when I was in government, that's been a trend. There's a drop in total crime, but an increase in violent crimes. So that means we have a society that's becoming more callous. At any means, get what I want, or at any means. You're seeing break-ins, not just break-ins, but break-ins with weapons. You're seeing hold-ups, and you're seeing fights. Now, what I'm hearing, based on what the school children say, is that, first of all, we know children ain't bringing in drugs into the country, and they ain't bringing in guns into the country. But a lot of what is happening in terms of the violence, they say, is either gang-related or bullying-related. So when people are hurt, they hurt others. I slow down. People tell me sometimes I talk too fast, and I slow down particularly to make that clear. Hurt people hurt people. People who have no self-esteem and who don't love themselves hurt people. Something in them makes them feel like, oh, well, I don't care anyhow. The only way you reach to the level of I don't care is if it wasn't put into you. Young people who seek gangs are seeking family. They're seeking family. So that tells me there's a breakdown in family life. There's a breakdown in loving and nurturing and disciplining our children from a young age. We are creating narcissists. We are creating me, and the rest of the world could go to hell in our children. We give and give and give. We show that having material is more important than spending quality time. So that child will do whatever, and the music is perpetrating it as well, do whatever to get what they want. Whilst when we were growing up, I am 51 today, we were taught you had to work hard, go to school, get a good education to make it in life. I never heard from any adult in my having, in my circle, whether it's family, school, or whatever, now you got to do this the fast way. We saw drugs being used. We saw weed was a thing back then. That was in late 70s and 80s in my area. You had a little group of people that from the neighborhood smoked the weed. That was it. There was and drank alcohol back then. That was the big drugs on St. Martin, as far as I knew, in the 70s and 80s. And I was a child, I was never tempted. You were raised, like I heard it there on St. Martin Day celebrations, when families went to church on a Sunday. Like, every family went to some church, whether it's on a Saturday or a Sunday. The church has lost its role as well of importance. You can go to church on your phone.
And they haven't lost their collections, though.
Oh, I think so. Some. No, but you could go to church on your phone.
True.
You could play your gospel music on your phone. You could even, somebody go on church and they go live in church. So I'm in church too. Even though I couldn't get up this morning, and I'm guilty. I'm guilty of having done that. And when you have a rough week. But you still, what you didn't put in as a parent, the Sunday school teachers and the other leaders, the Boys Brigade, the Scouts. I was very happy to see the Seventh-day Adventist Scouts in the parade. I digress, I know. But they had the biggest group of youth, of humans, in that uniform parade. More than the police, the VKS, and everybody else put together. The scouting group, or the Pathfinder group of the Seventh-day Adventist Church was the largest. It was large. So at least there, I'm looking at it, and when I saw that, my mind says, I think we need to do statistics into looking at the violent crimes, looking at doing more research into the whys, with the ones that you have incarcerated, with the ones that are reported. Do a deep research and see if you can find one or two mitigating factors that they are experiencing that we can deal with. But from my experience as a teacher, I am seeing that a destructured home setting, not having a proper structure, is leading to children controlling their own lives at home, so you cannot control their lives in school, you cannot control their lives in the streets. And I'm hearing a lot of complaints from parents that they feel they have to step in because their children are afraid to go to school. Their children are being threatened every day in school because they are not taking part in the gang activity. So I'm seeing it as gang activity and bullying. So those are things we need to address. Have them belong to groups that are doing positive things. Show them how this behavior that they're exhibiting is negatively affecting the entire society and our ability to continue to sustain ourselves. Because if it becomes so aggressive, nobody wants to come here. Nobody will want to come here. St. Martin is still a gem. It is still a gem. Despite having gone through that nasty experience in 2017, people are still coming to St. Martin. People are still coming. But if we do not deal with what our youth are experiencing, we have to engage them in the discussions as to how to solve this problem. And I had a youth conference back in my first term as minister, and that was back in 2012, or they had one in 2013. I haven't heard of any since. We are past due to have a proper conference of youth, and not only looking at the top echelon of our youth to have that voice. Not just the articulate ones or the ones who are doing well in school. Give every child a voice. Start student government organizations again. I would like to go back to the schools and find out how many of you still have a student government organization. Before I got involved in politics, that's something I did with some others who are politicians today. We went to each school and established student government associations with the hope that they would carry on and we could let go, and it's not directed from outside forces, that the schools promote students having a voice. And once you create that platform, you don't have to see fighting as your first resort. You understand what I mean? Do I think that having extra security guards will stop the fight? What happened by having security at the school? The fight moves from in the school to outside the school. With the amount of students in that area, you can never police it. A lot of people are saying move the schools out of the area. To move the schools out of the area, ELTON, means you have to build new schools.
Why?
I had the plan to build a high school next to the Lally, not Lally, Fleming. A Fleming Center where the elementary school is. The lot next to it is for a high school. Could never get the money on the budget for it. We even played with the idea of bartering it with a subsidized school to move, but they still would require building a school. And I was hoping that in the post-Irma situation, that with the Dutch funding, we would have been able to do that. And that would have at least taken one set out of that situation. But even when, for instance, Mac High put in for their permit, they already had the permits and everything else before they came and requested subsidy. And that was their location. Tell them no, because they choose that location. No matter how we discuss it with them, they would not look at another location because the Methodist Church owned that property. So it becomes difficult that they choose to facilitate having the schools close to their other schools already. So the school boards are already making that choice. So I think we need to look at putting some schools in Coal Bay, putting some schools in the Soccer Garden and
Spreading around.
in the Beltway areas. They would say Soccer Garden, Belvedere, Dutch Quarter, where there is some property. In the Hope Estate, we were looking at putting one of the schools as well at the back there by the senior center,
Yeah.
where the property was that GB had. We looked at several situations, so it will require getting the road fixed. I heard that was mentioned also by one of our youth, getting that road over Weymouth Hill into Dutch Quarter
Link 6.
done, because that would give the Link 6 an option for those not to use the LB Scott Road, and as well as those that come into the LB Scott Road and want to go to Phillipsburg, not to turn back, but just to go that way. Will it create more traffic in the Belvedere, Dutch Quarter area? Yes. So then, you have to fix those roads. Dutch Quarter Road has been under construction for years now. We need to get that fixed. You can't just divert the traffic one way. At the end of the day, we're 16 square miles. You have to also, I can remember 20 years ago, people saying, restrict cars.
I heard that too.
I don't think the people of St. Martin want to hear that. The only way you're going to be able to restrict cars is to fix the transportation system and make sure that public transportation goes everywhere and is affordable and reliable and safe.
I need your take on a proposal from, I think it was Member of Parliament Van Dam on the Tweede Kamer, who proposed that the Dutch take over law enforcement in St. Martin. But in his explanatory notes, he said that, no, the Dutch don't have to pay for it, St. Martin will continue to pay for it, but they will manage it, will be in our favor. What's your position on that?
There are several positions I can have on that. First of all, the Dutch Second Chamber can have as many discussions as they would like to have about St. Martin, the other countries within the kingdom, and especially their parts in the Dutch Caribbean with the best. They can have discussions, but everybody need to pay attention that he suggests that discussions start. That's what he says. They cannot decree for St. Martin. Let's make that abundantly clear. They cannot decree that St. Martin does that. We already have a protocol since 2010 for assistance with the justice chain. I would like an assessment of what has been invested and what has been done, a proper investment assessment, because the Dutch has been involved in our justice system since the then. We feel that we needed more assistance in one area or another. They focused their attention on the prosecutor's office, I believe, and on integrity chamber and fixing it so that what we are seeing now is even happening more often. Yet we still need an integrity chamber. I don't understand. We have so many persons being
Kicking down
found guilty without a trial based on the way investigations are carried out. And I'm going into government now, so I can't say it's horrible. You're going to be a part of it in a minute. I can throw as much rocks when I'm in parliament, but today, tomorrow, literally, I can be in government now. And then I have to sit on the side of take the responsibility for it. So for me, you've been involved in our justice chain since 2010. We had an agreement which hasn't been lived up to, as far as I'm hearing, on both sides. How much responsibility are you taking for that? Mr. Van Dam's proposal I've heard, and I am going to be dialoguing to find out what his intentions are besides what is written on a piece of paper, because even that, a lawyer can say A and B as to what it's saying. But what is clear from that motion, which got broad support, was that the discussion should start. St. Martin has been in discussion and will continue to be in discussion with our kingdom partners as long as we remain in this kingdom. So yes, we can have a discussion, but you are not going to make that unilateral decision for us though. That I can tell you full-fledged. Some says entertain it because then they will pay for it, but then I'm listening to you now saying, no, they're not going to pay for it. Well, that's been part of the problem with this kingdom relation, is that you make demands, our financial restraints and constraints, and yet you make demands that are impossible. I can look at a 5-year-old and say, look, it's about time you start to earn your keep. I can't be buying all this juice and crackers and fruit for you to go school with every day. What a child supposed to do? A 5-year-old go out there and pack bags? You understand what I'm saying? You have to look at your situation and understand the CFT. We've had a discussion in Parliament on the CFT and its role. I know from experience, we have an approved budget, we have an approved capital budget, and then middle of the year, when you're about to touch this budget, you're being told, no, don't. It's approved in your budget, but no, don't. From your kingdom government, from your CFT, recommending the kingdom government, etc. So the same things we are being slapped at, it's a vicious circle. The same things we're being slapped at is the same things we're being blocked from fixing because of the constraints on our finances. We had bad finances before Irma. We were on our way to repairing it. Due to Irma now, we fall into a catastrophic phase, and you're going to jump like, William said it best. The hurricane knock you on your back, and they jump on your belly. You understand? So give us a chance to get back on our feet. Give us a chance to start to fix what needs to be fixed so we can live up to the norms that you expect us to live up to. But we have to have these discussions on a basis of mutual respect. And I don't believe the previous government have been open in the struggles they have had in being respected. They have come across as if, we said this and we agreed to this. This is the best thing for the country. But now I'm hearing they fought tooth and nail. And then when they lost, they didn't come out and say, we lost. We fought for you, St. Martin. And that's why we are where we are today. Because on this side of the benches, we felt like there was no fight for this country. I don't know if you understand what I'm saying.
I still believe that. I've said that all the time. So.
Well, I'm hearing a lot now that I'm busy with the formation and getting more inside information. Is like, in March there was a big drag down fight between the Dutch and the St. Martin government. And then they came back to Parliament and acted as if it was their idea. No, you should have said the truth then. And maybe at that point, we could have unified to put the best forward for St. Martin. But you allowed people to think that it was your idea to go along and get along, and now this is where we are. And now we're facing an election as well.
One more thing I want to discuss in this crime section. We have taken a decision on the sale of the UTS shares, and the thing was to settle the issues with the police and the other uniformed services, first function book and salaries. The government, the interim government, has decided to take the first tranche, if you want to call it that, because seemingly it was paid in 2 phases. The first one, they went to settle debts with Tillam, and the police, who has been screaming for 10 years now to get things settled, are still there in the same position. Give me your take on that and how it's going to be dealt with.
Well, definitely in passing the amendment to the budget that saw the sale of UTS, an initiative from Parliament which we supported, we gave our preference as to where it should be. Government did say that, and their partners, based on the budget, had already said that these arrears had to be addressed. Yes, there are arrears that had to be addressed, but this arrears with the police force, with the justice chain, is also an arrears that we felt needed addressing along those lines. So it is still slated to address the police issues with their salaries, but the same function book that we debated over and over in the Parliament, and the Justice Minister saying, and he signed something, and at the end of the day, the function book still ain't in place. And you can't start paying out until you actually place the people in their right function and skills. You understand? So that has to be dealt with. And so, of course, if the functioning book ain't ready, you get a first tranche, you deal with the bills that can be paid at that time. They are not in a position to pay out that. And we did get the minister to clearly state that it would not be paid out before January. So nobody who worked in the justice chain should have ever put in their head, if they were listening to that meeting, that they could have been rectified or their situation would have been fixed prior to the end of this year. The minister at the end had to admit, because I asked that question, what is your timeline based on what you need to do with the function book, what still needs to happen, and when the funds come, as to when you will start to be able to pay out people. And he said not before 2020. Now when we go in there, our justice minister will now have to look and see what is the reality, assess, etc., and then be able to come out and say what the plan is moving forward. But again, we don't have all the details just yet.
Radio listeners,
it is our priority though, sorry.
Radio listeners, TV viewers, and social media followers, we are speaking with Madam Jacobs, Silveria Jacobs, the leader of the NA party, and just on that one with the police, I understand what it is, but I find it abusive anyway.
It is. I find
Let's
it
go.
abusive too, but again, you can't take blood out of stone. And I
understand
said,
that,
if people understand, okay, it might take a year, it might take 6 months, and you are told honestly,
speak the truth.
speak the truth, and then people could plan their lives. You understand what I'm saying? Anything could have happened this year that could have distorted whatever you may have said, but at least you could say, look, hey, I was here, this happened, and now I am here, I'm further back. But be honest with the people. I have always prided myself on being honest with the people, and that's why as soon as I get in, I mean, people calling me as if I'm in already. What are we going to do about this and what are we going to do about that? I'm like, I do not have all the facts. I do not have all the facts. And once I have all the facts, and it's a short period, and you're in the midst of election, you know, based on the movements, tit for tat story that we're getting used to and can be addressed in a short term. I've been given a list of things I have to deal with, and then there's all those other things that we are very, very concerned about. And we are assessing right now what can be done in a short period, what we can get done, move forward, win this election to be able to continue.
I follow the reports that State Secretary, now Minister Knops, gave to the second chamber on the work on being done by the trust fund, and 1,000 homes and schools are supposedly been repaired in St. Martin, and that
they're counting everything. The emergency
even the
fund,
emergency phase, it doesn't reach 1,000, so it's not true.
I don't think it's 1,000 either.
No,
but,
it is not. I'm sure I did the
from back
homework.
then he made those statements, and I'm like, but this does not jibe with what the trust, the NRPB is giving out. If you add up all the White and Yellow Cross, all the Red Cross, all the
St. Martin
SM
Development,
Development Fund, they had to me the most.
Yeah, and they didn't. They can't reach 1,000.
And you know that they're having a hard time to get more funds to continue.
I know.
Can you imagine that? Like, for me, from day one, seeing the success they had in the first 6 months, the entire rebuilding thing should have been put by them, and they've quantified everything and how they spend the funds.
So my question to you on that is, how do you see the workings of this trust fund? I mean, is it doing what it was intended to do for us?
Well, it would depend on whose intent you're talking about. The St. Martin people's intent was to accept these funds to be able to rebuild St. Martin quickly. What was the intention of the ones who gave it? Continue to make them struggle so that an imminent takeover would be the only resort. The people would be to the point of desperation to say, yeah, let the Dutch come in. I'm beginning to wonder. In fact, that was stated from the beginning. I wanted to give them the benefit of the doubt. The fact that the World Bank was used as the middleman to give these funds towards the rebuilding of St. Martin has proven, as we have said from the beginning, to be the noose around our necks. Everybody, including the Dutch, are complaining that the process is taking too long, and I would like for the responsibility to stay where it belongs, because I'm hearing the Dutch saying it's because we don't have things in place. But the majority of the funds are already, whatever has been transferred directly to the NRPB, are already being used for consultants, which are the majority people from your country. So then who's responsible?
Yeah, but
We did assessments prior to leaving. Assessments were done by the interim government at that time, prior to election. Assessments were done again by the sitting government. And you want to tell me then, sometime this year, when we had a meeting in June, July, August, we're being told assessments are still being done? But then you're walking around with a camera and showing the Dutch people some wooden shacks here and some wooden shacks there, as if that's the norm on St. Martin? And
My
people
problem-
live in a dilapidated state. I'm not saying they aren't, but that's not the norm. A lot of people have fixed their homes. Majority of the fixing that has been done has not been with World Bank funds. Let's get that straight.
I have a problem with when mistruths and falsehoods are
Being
dished out
perpetrated.
during over the other part of the Atlantic and the part of the kingdom. Nobody here stands up and corrects it or speaks out on it. And then the ombudsman had spoken with government about these qualifications. How do you quantify to get help? So the ombudsman hits the road and does her own thing. And if we see the devastation and the situation the people living in, and then to hear my parliament don't comment on what CONOP says, and then it lives a life of its own, because I saw an interview lately with Mr. Bossman. He's saying, yeah, but look how good work we do in St. Martin. And they honestly believe what they are told, but I'm on the ground here. It is not true.
No, we all know that the procurement process to be able to work or secure funding through the trust fund via the World Bank or via the NRPB is taking very, very long. I'm hearing the fingers are being pointed at St. Martin as to the blame. Whether they're blaming the function of the NRPB, which they set up, they don't have enough staff. I'm like, wow, you lost a bunch of civil servants that went to the NRPB, and you're still saying so. Government don't have enough staff to execute its work now, and now the NRPB don't have enough staff to do its work. You're bringing in consultants. You need a special consultant at the airport because you're giving a loan of 50 million there because you don't trust us. At the end of the day, it's a trust issue. They don't trust us. We don't trust them. I don't think other people maybe want to say it out loud like this, but I will say it. And based on the way things are going, the trust is going further and further apart. That I can now get a formation assignment that says, work on the cooperation within the kingdom. That's part of my job now.
Yeah, we're going to take care of that. I want to talk about that also, because
but I agree with you that we need
things.
to address what's being said in The Hague. But I can tell you there was so much going on right here that I personally didn't have time to address every politician, because this is something we need to remember in St. Martin. They are politicians too. The same distrust you have for the own people here in St. Martin, look at them at least and think twice what's their motivation for what they are saying. They are politicians too. And when they make a video to say this is why doing in St. Martin, is to keep their seat in the Netherlands. Keep that in your mind as well.
I want to talk about the reconstruction of PGI that you just mentioned, and the plea clearance, everything around it. But besides that, I want you to address also the fact that if I applied for a job at the airport at government that needed screening, to get it, I wouldn't be able to start to work before the screening is complete. How is it possible that they bring a CFO from Paul Group, and he's able to come on and work as an advisor until his screening is done? How does that happen? We don't extend the same thing to our people.
And they love to say presidentschepping and setting precedents. And I hope now they realize they've set a precedent. So tomorrow, I mean, we've had great presentations in Parliament from St. Martiners in the diaspora as to how to plan and prepare for the strengthening hurricanes, etc. I don't know if you followed the presentation of Mr. Kreithoff. He's a brilliant man. I hope he can come in as a consultant, same way. Yeah, we went to school together. I hope he can get through the same way. Because the hard thing about it is St. Martin people come with projects, even those that live here, and say, government, you should try this. And you know what? The system we took over from the Dutch with all of the checks and balances in place saying, oh, no, but we have to put it out on bid. So I come with a great idea, but government have to put it on bid. I think if I come with a great idea with substantiated scientific proof and government hires me, there does not need to be a bidding process. Because who in St. Martin going to be able to compete with what Mr. Kreithoff brought? Who will be able to compete on a level with that? I think as a government, we should be able to say this is something that fits within our priority setting. This is something that is necessary for the country. We think this proposal can work based on this, and we'll go into a contract with this person. The situation that went on at the airport, the government of St. Martin signed on to it. That's how it could happen. The government of St. Martin accepted the conditions as placed by the Dutch government in that to be able to get the funding, the loan, that a person would be on the board. There was a big dispute. Oh, who made the proposal from who didn't make the proposal? At the end of the day, the government agreed. So don't worry too much about what Van Dam say and then what, no. Van Dam could say what he wants to say, but it will take the government of St. Martin to sit with the government of the Netherlands and agree before anything can happen. And in this case, with the gentleman that was proposed for the airport, this is something the St. Martin government agreed to. They agreed to it. And because it's urgent, and they felt that the person is a professional in his field, you know, my MP got his whole CV and could tell you what his vote up lighting is, what his experience is, and all of that good stuff. And it's an insult to St. Martin people that you cannot have someone that is from here or maybe from here in the diaspora to come and do it the same way. Would they have been afforded the same
I know Salatna, who's an engineer in aviation, working in Aruba, you want to work here.
Consultancy? Would he get that same consultancy while he's going through his screening process?
Yeah.
Why our ministers didn't get sworn in right when government fall then?
Then they should go and work till the screening
until the screening finish. And then if the screening ain't good, then they leave. Why not that? Because the people feel like it's craziness. You have a new coalition, but you don't have a government that you support in there for already more than 2 months.
2 months now.
You understand? And it took a long time before the formation of the act was even given. And you have to go through your rounds of discussion. This is our constitution. This is what our constitution does.
You have taken a lot of my time. I have 2 pages of questions.
2 pages?
And we're 10 minutes over, but
So
I have one more question.
You want me to stop?
You have to come back here. No, I'm going to pose this question as the last, and you got to come back. You owe me time. But this one I need to...
10 I owe you time.
You came late. So I want to talk about this so-called non-disclosure clauses that I hear from government-owned companies and other things. And I heard it from in the PGA negotiation. I heard it from SILVERIA just lately that yes, non-disclosure, they may not disclose this and disclose. How does that work? I am the shareholder rep, the shareholder basically. We're 100% owners of this thing. And SILVERIA case is a government entity, not a department. But they have non-disclosure clause that they can't tell Parliament, which is the elected body that represents the people. How does that work?
Because in these settings, I have not seen it, of course, because of the non-disclosure agreement. Government owns the airport, right?
That's fair.
But based on, you see, sometimes you put a plaster on a sore, but you didn't actually deal with the source of the problem. And so it's festering under the plaster. So in the past, they felt that there was too much hands-on interference from government in the government-owned companies. There was too much of using them as your piggy bank. You've heard the story. You were there back in them days. Come on, you know. You know why these things are in place today. But the same things you put in place to protect the company now keeps you at arm's length. That corporate governance ordinance maybe needs to be assessed to some degree. You want to be able to put professionals to run these government-owned companies so that they can be profitable for the country. That's the idea. Once they are profitable for the country, then the country utilizes those assets, those funds gained, or dividends, whatever it is, to maintain a good standard of life for the people. Yeah, so you have your utilities, you have the airport, you have the harbor, you have Telem, etc. These are government-owned. You appoint the board, corporate governance does their screening, gives you recommendation, you appoint it, and that's where your hands are off. You get a budget, I think you maybe have to approve as a shareholder, but the operations, you're supposed to let them do. So in their operations, if they are authorized to sign contracts with third parties, you as a shareholder can request that information, and that's what the Council of Ministers does. But those are closed meetings. Business people, I'm not a business person on that level, but I understand I've sat in some of those shareholders meetings where they're going to say something in here, but they don't want their competition out there to know. So the shareholder, which is government, gets the information, but they're not allowed to divulge it to the greater, including Parliament. Parliament are holding government accountable. Parliament has ways to get that information. And if it is sensitive information, then a closed door meeting can be held to get the information and then decide what to do with it. As you've seen recently, an inquiry was called on a topic. I heard you talking about it before you brought on some excerpts from the Mullet Bay meeting. The inquiry is part of the process, but it's not a first step, as the former chair lady was saying. It's not a first step. So if in a case like this, you go through every step as Parliament, including having closed door meetings to get to the crux of the matter. Listen, having been in government, you don't want to create hysteria, panic, and then again, for instance, certain issues that you have in government, you cannot be calling civil servants' name, and you can't be putting that kind of light on a 16 square mile, the Dutch side part of the island, where you have to walk down in the street and you see that person tomorrow, their family members. Everybody knows everybody in a big country like the United States, like America, like the Netherlands, like other countries in Europe. The country is big. The people are not connected. But because of our smallness, we have small island culture, we have small island connectedness, you have to be very careful of what type of information you put out there. So I can understand that certain information has to remain confidential, but not all of it, and then you have to be able to explain why. If you're not giving a plausible reason why, then for me, I would have suggested at that point, close the meeting or close the doors to the meeting and let the members of parliament get the information as members of parliament that deserve to know. As you say, to hold government accountable. Because if you are holding things to your chest as government and I cannot know, then I'm going to take the wrong conclusion and then you might go home.
Okay, the next thing I need to actually be closing is the election, of course. NA is running.
NA is running.
How does it look?
We
and
look
you have
good.
to promise me also that you'll come back to finish my 2 pages of questions.
How far were you?
I just 1.5.
1.5?
Yeah.
Okay, so just a half more to go?
Yeah.
Oh, that's
half
great. So
long.
when you want me back?
Sometime next week, Tuesday will be fine.
Okay, I don't know yet if Tuesday will work.
But just call me and
I'll
let me
give
know.
you need to give me a number because I was trying to call you to tell you I was late, but I couldn't reach you.
Okay.
I would like to.
NA before you.
NA is, I believe, I know, and the people have shown it, one of the strongest, most stable parties in this election. We have proven that over the years. We are hardworking, we are innovative, and we are progressive. We are the only party that has voluntarily had a change of leadership. We have grown. We have the most young people in parliament right now. Once our ministers move from parliament, once our members of parliament move to ministers, even more young people will be coming in. So that shows you that we present a list and you get an opportunity to represent your country. And that is what you would want. You want people who are out there asking the questions in parliament and doing the work in government. And that is what the National Alliance does. So I'm asking for your support on January 9th. Find a candidate on your list. I'm at the top of the list, and everyone under that list below me is a valid, valuable member of this community that can take us where we need to be. So come out in big numbers. We need a full mandate to create the stability that we want in St. Martin.
Okay, Silveria, I want to thank you for coming for the show, even though you reached late. Thank you very much.
Oh, Lord, you keep saying it. We went over there. You get your hour.
I'll bring it back, yeah. Radio listeners, TV viewers, and our followers on social media, we've been talking to the leader of the National Alliance Party, Ms. Silveria Jacobs. We want to thank her for coming. Thank you for following the show, and have a good day further. Goodbye.